So, today we have a strange selection of cards here. You might be wondering what these cards are for. Well, honestly, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is just kind of dumb. So, it's not as easy to, know what the cards do as, for example, like a Hearthstone or a Legends of Runeterra. Like, those cards are pretty straightforward. You can look and see what the cards do, and you'll see, like, this card has this effect, and that kind of effect is consistent with all like the cards that also possess that trait or attribute or whatever. Yu-Gi-Oh is not like that. Like, look, I'll just read Uni Zombie effect for you guys real quick. You can target one face-up monster on the field, discard one card, and if you do, increase that target's level by 1. And notice there is actually a semicolon here, and the commas don't really matter here. You can target one face-up monster on the field. Semicolon monsters you control cannot attack for the rest of this turn, except zombie monsters. Also send one zombie monster from your deck to the graveyard, and if you do, increase that target's level by 1. So here, let's see. Let's focus on this line here. You can target one face-up monster on the field, and then this condition will happen afterwards. And then you also send one zombie monster from your deck to the graveyard. And then if you're able to send the monster from your deck to the graveyard, specifically it says to the graveyard, increase that target's level by 1. So actually, you need to send to the graveyard here, or you don't get the level increase. But I mean, that genuinely doesn't matter most of the time. Can you use this effect under Dimension Shifter? I think you can. But the order is different. You target one face-up monster on the field. Okay. And then this. And then you also do this. I think you can on this effect. But then, like, let's pull up, like, for example, Forbidden Droplet, like, let's go ahead. Forbidden Droplet. Alright. Send any number of other cards from your hand and or field to the graveyard. Semicolon, choose that many effect monsters your opponent controls, and until the end of this turn, their attack is halved and their effects are negated in response to this card's activation. Yada yada. Okay. So, this cannot activate under D Shifter, but it also likewise says, like, it mentions the graveyard here, like the card goes to the graveyard. The card goes to the graveyard. But this is by effect, I think, and not like a cost. And that's why you're allowed to do it, I think. I can't even be completely certain for you guys here, but it's just whack. And then we won't focus on this too much, but then, for example, like, there's a lot of card decks where you read through. Like, on my DDD end board, I have quite a few monsters that you might not know about, and I have my pendulum effects, and then I have my, like, monsters, my extra deck monsters and whatnot. So, lots to read through. So, a common mistake a lot of my opponents have, like, not like a super lot, but this line right here. When a spell trap card or its effect is activated, quick effect, you negate the activation. But my opponents fail to notice this line once per your turn. So this actually, I can't activate this effect. This is basically a vanilla monster almost. It's not like quite a vanilla monster because this effect up here is still live, but I can't negate anything. This isn't an interruption. Yeah, but a common misconception is that this is a quick effect here, just a once per turn quick effect, because my opponents failed to read the your in between here. Well, unfortunate for them, but in the same, like, strand of thought here, we have Danger Tsuchinoko. You can reveal this card in your hand. Your opponent randomly chooses one card from your entire hand. Then you can discard the chosen card. Then if the discard card was not Dangerous Uchinoko, special summon one Dangerous Uchinoko from your hand. And if you do, draw one card. If this card is discarded, you can special summon this card. You can only use this effect of Dangerous Uchinoko once per turn. So, but this is referring to the discard effect, and it doesn't mention that the reveal in hand effect is once per turn at all. So, if you Ash Blossom, I can just activate Dangerous Uchinoko again, because it's not hard once per turn. It's not once per turn at all. I can do this as many times as I like. Even if there's like a rivalry on field or some kind of locking me out of being able to special summon Tsuchinoko, you can still do the reveal a card effect and then discard a card, whatever. Alright. And then we'll move on to, well, we'll go into Dark Refer in a second. We have Silva, Warlord of the Dark World. So, if this card is discarded to the graveyard by card effect, special summon this card. That's the effect we're going to focus on. The rest doesn't really matter for the example I'm about to give. So, Dark Refer says you can special summon this card from your hand by discarding one level 5 or higher dark monster. And then once per turn you can discard one dark monster, send one dark monster from your deck to the graveyard. So, this is cost. This is also cost. So, that doesn't trigger Silva, Warlord of the Dark World. But, well, I guess Tsuchinoko is not a good example here. But, like, for Danger Nessie, we'll just bring up Danger Nessie. Danger Nessie. Alright. So, Danger Nessie. If Danger Nessie is, let's see. If this card is discarded, it doesn't mention by effect here. If this card is discarded, then you can add one danger card from your deck to your hand. Except for Danger Nessie. You can only use that effect of Danger Nessie once per turn, yep. Anyway, so Dark Refer, like this discard here and this discard here, they can both trigger Danger Nessie, and I guess the other one can trigger like Danger Tsuchinoko. But neither of them can work on Silva. And then this is why we have Unizombie here. Unizombie, this discard is actually an effect. And also the level raise is also kind of an effect, which is weird to think about. But if I discard Danger Tsuchinoko or Silva or like a Danger Nessie, all of the discard effects actually activate from Unizombie, because Unizombie discards for effect, meaning I can special summon Silva from those discards. And the danger discards as well, they're random, but if they do hit like Silva will special summon itself. Tell me that isn't a bit confusing. And then we'll go here. That some cards have like very uncommon terminology as well, which is kind of awkward. So right here, during your main phase, if this card is in the graveyard because it was sent there this turn, you can fusion summon one level A or higher DED fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed on it from your graveyard, including this card. So, first off, there's a lot of card text on these cards, you know? But second of all, this line right here, this card in the graveyard because it was sent there this turn. Meaning if Vice Typhon was, so the thing well, let's take a step back for a second. So the thing I recommended in a previous video is you should always send Necro Slime first before like Vice Typhon, unless you have like a small Genghis on field already. The reason being like if you send Vice Typhon and for some reason you're unable to continue your lines of play, then Vice Typhon has that stipulation, so you won't be able to actually activate Vice Typhon unless you like special summon Vice Typhon or return it to your hand or something, and then put it back into the graveyard. Unless you do something like that, you can't actually activate this effect to special summon. Well, I guess in this case it'll be Flame Hiking Genghis, but whack. And then you might be wondering why I put Lightning Storm in here. So I'll read Lightning Storm to you guys real quick. If you control no face-up cards, activate one of these effects. Destroy all attack position monsters your opponent controls. Destroy all spells and traps your opponent controls. You can only activate one Lightning Storm per turn. You can only activate one Lightning Storm per turn. So, for example, we'll go here. Solemn Judgment. When a monster would be summoned or a spell trap card is negated, pay half your life points. Negate the summon or activation, and if you do, destroy that card. Alright, and then real quick, let's read Baron's Negate effect. When a card or effect is activated, quick effect, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. Negate the activation. You can only activate one Lightning Storm per turn, so if you had two Lightning Storms in your hand, for example, and Baron or Solemn Judgment were used in response, you can actually activate a second Lightning Storm because the first one didn't get to activate. And Branded Fusion, same thing. You can only activate one Branded Fusion per turn. So if you Baron negate, apparently, I believe, Branded Fusion, then if you have a second Branded Fusion in your hand, you can activate it, I guess. But like, for example, with Branded Opening, it says you can only use each effect of Branded Opening once per turn. So if Branded Opening gets like solemned or Baron negated, you can't activate like the second Branded Opening in your hand. And also, we'll go read over Branded Lost as well. After we read Ash Blossom, I guess, actually, yep. When a card or effect is activated that includes any of these effects, quick effect, you can discard this card, negate that effect, which is different because it didn't negate the activation. It negates the effect. So this terminology, obviously, it gets a bit confusing, as one might imagine. But let's keep trekking on. Where were we? Oh yeah, Branded Lost. The activation of your cards and effects that include an effect that fusion summons a fusion monster cannot be negated. Also, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects when a monster is fusion summoned this way. If you fusion summon a fusion monster, you can add one Fallen of Elbas, or one monster that mentions it from your deck to your hand. You can only use this effect of Branded Lost once per turn. Alright, so the activation here. So if you have Branded Lost on field, and then your opponent has, like, for example, a Baron and a Solemn, then they're legally allowed to activate, as you can see here. But it says the activation of your cards and effects that include an effect that fusion summons a fusion monster cannot be negated. But it doesn't say they cannot respond to it. So they're allowed to, like, chain to a Baron on Branded Fusion or chain to Solemn Judgment on a Branded Fusion here. But it does nothing because they both negate the activation. But Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring here, it says negate that effect, so it did not negate the activation, meaning it bypasses the Branded Lost protection. So chain 1 Branded Fusion with Branded Lost on field, chain 2 Ash Blossom. Branded Fusion does not get negated, but in case of like the same thing with either Baron or Solemn Judgment, it doesn't work. And then there's like this terminology that's used on like 0 other cards. Let's see, that name cannot be used. Okay, cannot be used. Like this, like barely any cards use this terminology in the same way. Like this says cannot be used as material for a fusion synchro, cannot be used as material for an XYZ summon, but in the context of specifically Prohibition, I believe there's no other card like this, because it says activate by declaring one card name. Cards with that name and their effects cannot be used. Cards already on the field are not affected, including face down cards. So Prohibition is actually kind of insane. So, cannot be used. So, what you can do with a card that cannot be used is this. Oh. Hold on. Damn. It's so hard to find a card. Yo, if I type this, does that help narrow it down? Please? Where's my 1-for-1? Let's use 1-for-1. Yeah, definitely want to use 1-for-1 for this example. 1-for-1. I'm struggling to find 1-for-1 here. I have the card. 1-for-1. Well, why can I not find 1-for-1? Oh, there we go, 1-for-1. So 1-for-1 says, send one monster from your hand to the graveyard, special summon one level 1 monster from your hand or deck. So this just sends any monster from your hand to the graveyard as the cost. And while we're here, might as well explain cost and effect. So think of cost this way: before the chains even resolve, you have to pay the cost. So there are like kind of cost effects where you pay kind of the cost during chain resolution. So it's kind of weird, but yeah. For example, though, we'll use Unizombie as an example. Unizombies discard one monster from your hand. Or not monster, discard one card from your hand. That is actually an effect to discard, so if Unizombie's effect is negated here in this case, nothing happens, okay? But if I use Dark Reference effect here, like once per turn you discard one dark monster, send one dark monster from your deck to the graveyard, we have to pay the cost first, and then the other half, the send one dark monster from your deck to the graveyard, that will happen like on chain resolution. And same with like branded opening, discard one card, then take one Despia monster from your deck, right? Or is it? I don't remember. Is this a cost or an effect? Well, either way, basically costs, you have to pay the cost before the chain resolves, and for effects happen during chain resolution, I guess is how you would put that. But back to Prohibition. Cards with that name and their effects cannot be used. So this is actually really insanely stupid how this card works. The term cannot be used, so we'll pull up Fallen of Albaz here. If declaring with Fallen of oh, my filters are... Alright. So we have Fallen of Albaz mentioned on here, and then we have Fallen of Albaz here. Okay. So with Fallen of Albaz, you can no longer, after Prohibition is declared, you can no longer normal summon or special summon Fallen of Albaz. Alright, and then the effect of Fallen of Albaz doesn't really matter because you can't really do anything with Fallen of Albaz. And now that I think about it, how does Prohibition work on like Supreme King, Starving Venom, Dragon? Like, if there's a Fallen of Albaz in the graveyard, Prohibition declared, and then you Supreme King, Starving Venom on Fallen of Albaz. I mean, Fallen of Albaz doesn't have an effect, so that's not necessarily the best example. But like, so for example, let's go with instead Unizombie, I guess, sure, in the graveyard. And then you special summon Supreme King, Starving Venom, and then you copy the effect of Unizombie. I guess you just can't activate the effect, maybe? But the card was already on the field, so it's like, eh. But anyways, you can't normal summon or special summon Fallen of Albaz, or specifically this is cards with that name and their effects cannot be used as well. And this actually also negates Despian Quiritis. And since it says specifically cards with that name and their effects cannot be used, you can't use them in like fusion summon either as material. Like, so you can't go polymerization using Fallen of Albaz plus, let's say, Silva to make, I guess Lubellion in this case. I think it was. Yeah, Lubellion. That would not be legal. You can't activate branded fusion at all because you have to use Fallen of Albaz as a material, so prohibition stops that as well. And also branded loss effect over here. You can add one Fallen of Albaz or one monster that mentions it. You just can't activate this at all either, because this says, even though it says or, because I know this because I played against Prohibition once. Like, so my Quiritis effect, I can't activate this effect at all because it says one Fallen of Albaz or one Despia monster. I could not even summon a Despia monster because Prohibition declared Fallen of Albaz. So I believe Mirror Jade also has an effect like that as well, if you could somehow get into a Mirror Jade. You can send one fusion monster from your extra deck to the graveyard that mentions Fallen of Albaz. Just because it says Fallen of Albaz here, that might not even work, honestly. It's just crazy how Prohibition works. And Prohibition is pretty confusing because this is the only card in the game with an effect that really does this. The other one, I think there are like 2 others, but they're not really played. Like Sales Ban, your opponent cannot activate cards or the effects of cards with the same original card as that declared card. No, this isn't even the same. What? The same restriction applied to you, but for the rest of this duel instead. Like, the text on this is completely different. This specifically uses the terminology cannot be used. So, cannot be used is pretty disgusting, and it's literally only on this one card, on Prohibition, and no other cards. Not very confusing at all yet, huh? And I figured kind of recently, my brain kind of just started activating, you know? So, we'll use Lamia as an example, and then we'll pull up Griffin. And then, let's pull up Contract with the Gate. Dark Contract with the Gate. So, Contract with the Gate here. So this here is a cost, I believe. So you can send one DD or Dark Contract card from your hand or face-up field to the graveyard, except for DD Lamia. And then special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. So, to activate this, you need to send like a contract or a DD monster, whatever. So if I had a DD Griffin on field, I can't send it for cost, because to meet a cost you have to like, if you apply the effect on DD Griffin, send to graveyard, then what happens is Griffin goes to the top of the extra deck. So this send a DD effect here, this technically Griffin can't be sent. So you can't use Griffin on field as cost for DD Lamia, but like Dark Contract with the Gate, whether it's on field or in hand, whatever, you can use Contract with the Gate, but also pens in your hand also get sent to the graveyard like normal. So even if they're destroyed in your hand, they don't go to the extra deck or whatever, they just go to the graveyard. Just a very small amount of confusion, as one might imagine. So there's like a billion different interactions like this that make Yu-Gi-Oh! Kind of just absolutely jank. And that's without mentioning like all of the terminology and stuff, like for example with the Ash Blossom stuff and like the Lightning Storm stuff, the branded loss, branded fusion stuff. It's hella hella confusing. And honestly kind of annoying. Like, for example, like, with how Ash Blossom works as well. Like, it doesn't specifically mention it anywhere here, of course, right? But, you can't activate Ash Blossom on something that activates in the damage step. So, in this case, we'll just bring out one of our favorite cards on this channel, Evandred Savior. This effect, during damage calc, if this card battles an opponent's monster, quick effect, you can send one zombie monster from your deck to the graveyard. The first reason that Ash Blossom doesn't work on this is because this actually sends for cost, but that doesn't make complete sense because Cherubini can be negated. Oh, missed a few there. Cherubini can be negated for some reason, but this here, you can send one other card. No, wrong one. You can send one level 3 monster from your deck to the graveyard, then target one Bring Abyss monster on the field that gains attack defense equal to the attack defense of the monster sent to the graveyard until the end of this turn. You can activate Ash Blossom on this for some reason, even though the send effect will still happen, but then this effect to gain attack defense doesn't happen. Like, that doesn't quite make sense. But I mean, I guess it happens. Still, so you're still allowed to chain Ash to this, but Ash Blossom specifically doesn't stay like a damage step kind of thing. So, for example, we have Doom King Ballad Rock. Except during the damage step, you can't activate Doom King Ballad Rock's effect in the damage step. I mean, you just can't. So the damage step is also jank, and some of those effects are weird to, like, unless you have like a lot of knowledge on that, it'll feel really awkward for you to play. Like, this is a pretty nasty card because, like, damage step. Here, quick effect, you can make this card gain attack equal to, wait, here, once rebelled during the damage calc. If this card battles a special summon monster, quick effect. And it uses the terminology once per battle as well. I mean, it is fun that this kind of gives some depth to Yu-Gi-Oh, but it's also very complicated and makes it hard for new players to kind of get into the groove, you know? Because you have to learn of a billion different interactions like this. Like, I could go off, like, for hours on this kind of thing. Like, these kind of weird interactions and such. In fact, let's go off on another one. So, let's say I special summon Baron DeFleur, okay? Fair enough, right? So then my opponent uses Book of Moon on my Baron, and I don't really care. I don't need to negate that with my Baron. So I'll just let that Book of Moon resolve, and then I'll just think, alright, I can flip over my Baron next turn, you know? And I'll still have the Omni negate on my Baron, right? Because Book of Moon doesn't destroy my Baron or anything, so whatever. And that was the one face down card my opponent had anyways, alright? And then next turn, I'll flip over my Baron DeFleur. Chain Solemn Judgment, okay. Now, Baron DeFleur is not properly summoned. Why? And, like, let's say, for example, I have Zombie World and Mizuki up. So I can actually technically activate Mizuki's effect to bring back Baron DeFleur because it counts as a zombie, except I can't because Baron DeFleur was not summoned properly. Even though I special summoned it, you got Book of the Moon, and I just basically flipped it over, which apparently counts as a so-called flip summon. So this is the second time I'm summoning the same Baron on my field, but then the technically second summon gets negated by Solemn Judgment, and it does not count as properly special summoned. Yeah, so that's also a thing. Speaking of that, there's a lot of jank involving like a Book of Moon type effect, flipping down like extra deck monster, and then like card effects that activate, and like there are a bunch of different effects that are completely jank with this. Like for example, Guardian Chimera is a good example. Oh, Chimera. Alright. So if we special summon Guardian Chimera and it gets flip face down, any of you guys want to guess the rulings for this one? Yeah, I don't really want to think about it either. And then like Defusion on a card that got flip face down, flip back face up, and then Defusion on that like a fusion monster or whatever, or like Desynchro in the same way. Yeah, it's just Yu-Gi-Oh's kind of just jank like that. I mean, it does give depth to the game, I guess, to a certain extent. But like if you guys really understand these effects, it's kind of still rough. Like Nibiru, for example. Let's also bring out Nibiru and Token Collector, I guess, for this example. So we'll wrap it up after this one. Sorry, I've been dragging this on for a while, but during the main phase, if your opponent normal or special summon 5 or more monsters this turn, quick effect, you attribute as many face-up monsters on the field as possible, and if you do special summon this card from your hand, then special summon 1 primal being token, rock light level, yada yada, to your opponent's field. This token's attack defense becomes the combined original attack defense of the attributed monsters. You can only use this effect of Nibiru the primal being once per turn. And then we have Token Collector. If a token is special summoned, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from the graveyard if it was there when the token was special summoned, or hand. Even if not, you can only use this effect of Token Collector once per turn if this card is special summoned. Destroy as many tokens on the field as possible, and if you do, this card gains 400 attack for each token destroyed. Neither player can special summon tokens. So, if Token Collector is on the field, and your opponent or someone has Nibiru in their hand, and the activation condition of 5 summoned monsters, normal or special summon, is completed, right? Do you guys know why you can't activate Nibiru? Because this conjuncture here, then effects have to be like they have to be activatable. Like even if it's an optional kind of effect, like if it is then you still have to be able to do that thing. So like let's say for example there's a card that says destroy all monsters on the field, then you can add, let's say, Ash Blossom from your deck to the hand. If you have no Ash Blossoms in deck, you can't activate that effect. Even though it's like an optional effect to add Ash Blossom, just for example. Because the then conjuncture has to be met. Like, you have to be able to do it. So, in this case, it's special summon a primal being token, which is not possible because Token Collector has this continuous effect. Neither player can special summon tokens. So even though this part is met for Nibiru, the then part is not doable, meaning you cannot Nibiru. It is illegal to activate Nibiru here. Which is kinda jank, honestly. But if you know, you know. Speaking of which, if you guys didn't know, if your opponent normal or special summon 5 or more monsters this turn, this doesn't count like normal or special summon, so if you pen for 5, you can instantly be Nibiru'd before you go into any extra deck monsters in that case. Because it says normal or special summoned, but like, well, we'll go through one more example, guys. We'll go for a summon limit here. Summon limit. Oh boy. Everyone's favorite card. Neither player can summon more than 2 times per turn. Negated summons count toward this limit. Negated card effects that would summon do not count. So, ignoring this jank line here that I don't want to think about. It says summon. So if I pen summon for 5, that's technically summoning 5 monsters, and then I can, for example, like, special summon Baron DeFleur, and that would count as 2 summons. Because a pen summon is just 1 summon, technically, although I special summoned technically 5 monsters, which is how that meets Nibiru's condition. Even though I summoned 5 monsters, it only counts as 1 summon for summon limit. So all these jank little nuances and rulings are kind of just confusing and what makes Yu-Gi-Oh kind of Yu-Gi-Oh. So I don't even know what I'm going to name this video, but thanks for sticking by. And yeah, that's all I've got for you guys today. So see ya.